Greetings. Welcome to Discipline and Desire. I am your host, Lorian Hassan, or Law, or Lawrence Servant. We have a good one for you today. Episode 5, Reflection versus Rumination. In correspondence to my upcoming memoir, each chapter begins with an epigraph. So for this episode, the epigraph is as follows. Reflection is the art of seeing with clarity. Rumination is the trap of staring at the same shadow until it swallows you. Now, before we go any further, I do want to discuss why I decided to do this podcast, the purpose of Discipline and Desire. It's not just the title of my keynote, but the purpose of all of this is to guide folks through clarity, help guide folks through healing, and more importantly, help guide folks through honest living. With your discipline, you are able to be more honest with yourself, and thus not deny and deprive yourself of your desires. But in order to receive certain desires, you have to have certain discipline, as my journey has taught me a way. So again, today's theme is reflection and rumination. Funny inquiry. You ever find yourself replaying a conversation in your head like Netflix, but it's stuck on buffering? That's rumination. We're going to define both concepts, but before we do, let's become more present. Let's do our breath work. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Do the next 2 in your own. Okay. I needed that, for my energy was high. My energy was faster than the cadence that I preferred. Let's define concepts. What does it mean when we say reflection? Reflection you can think of as a practice of looking back, but with intention. Reflection yields aligned action, growth, and understanding. You can think of those as the fruitage that it bears. And in order to reflect, one has to be present. One has to be centered. One has to be grounded, so that one can truly see its reflection. Copy? What about the concept of rumination? For rumination is cyclical. It's endless. like a replay without resolution. Round and round. In that round and round, rumination develops stagnation, self-criticism, disempowerment. In that round and round, rumination feels like motion, but it's stillness disguised as chaos. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's zoom in on rumination. You can think of rumination as loops without landing. And we're going to cover a few examples of where rumination can be seen in many different settings, such as corporate, a space that I played in for many, many years. How does rumination look like when it comes to romantic relationships? What about in the family structure? What about peer groups? Let's start with corporate. Rumination, loops without landing. In corporate, it's like replaying what you should have said in the meeting instead of preparing for the next one. Have you ever found yourself in that loop? Or what about the loop that occurs in romantic relationships, where you find yourself stuck in what ifs after a breakup instead of integrating the lesson that was experienced? What about rumination in family structures? Have you ever found yourself replaying past arguments with parents or siblings or cousins? I should have said this. Why did they say this? Peer groups. Endless analysis of how you're perceived socially from your peers. Wondering, what do they think of you? Do they like you? Rumination is like running on a treadmill, hoping to get to the kitchen. You're just hungry, tired, and still in the same damn place. Well, how can we reflect even more so? How can we have healthy reflection? In order for there to be healthy reflection, we have to be anchored in presence. Reflection offers clarity, insight, and alignment. We're able to see these reflections through a few examples: journaling, meditation. One of my favorites, by reviewing choices, not to blame, but to learn from them. I chose this. Did I not see the mountain when I picked my view? Reflection opens the door to aligned action. And there is where presence and purpose connect. Now, some may know, almost a year to this date, I jumped out of a plane for the first time, something that I always had on my list to do, my life list. I also had a wonderful experience with the person that encouraged me to do so, for they now are on their 125th, and it's probably more than that by now, jump. We had a great time, a great relationship. And I would ask her many questions about her journey, about the physics that came with skydiving. I would pick her brain, and she was a great teacher in that space. So I want to use a skydiving analogy when we think of reflection. Reflection as landing. Reflection is like a good skydiving landing. Because when you're jumping out of a plane, one of the things that she taught me was don't forget where your target is. And your target is the drop zone, where you want to land. So the target equals a goal, but you have to have the insight in order to get to your target. You have to be able to see it before you exit that plane. Another part of skydiving that's important when we think of landing, reflection as landing, is the landing pattern. There's a landing pattern after you get to a certain depth when you're falling, accelerating free falling. So in this analogy, the landing pattern equals your chosen approach. How do you want to land? And what pattern? What is your approach as you're reflecting? Now, there are many variables when one is jumping out of a plane. And we're going to make a comparison of those variables. Again, reflection as landing. One of the variables is wind. When you're jumping out of a plane, the winds could be at different miles per hour. The wind currents could be different as you're falling. One may be taking you to the left, one may be taking you to the right, one may be pushing you up. There's so many different. Analogy would be circumstances. So when you're reflecting, think of the circumstances as well when you're thinking about where you want to land with this reflection. Another variable, clouds. One can only imagine when going through a cloud, you can't see anything. So I've been told. So when we compare, a variable that could be a cloud when we're reflecting could be confusion. Sometimes we need clarity. And we can't get clarity if we're confused, if we can't see. So what do we need to do? Sometimes we just need to go through that cloud. Be patient. When I did my first jump, it was during sunset. It was beautiful. But when we were ascending, there were certain parts where there was a strong glare. And I was told that's why some skydivers wear certain glasses to be able to reflect or deflect the glare so they can, again, see their target and see their landing pattern. So a glare could just be distractions. What is distracting you when you're trying to reflect, when you're trying to land? Where do you want to land? Distractions can take us from that. And then another variable we can discuss is malfunction. Malfunction of the altimeter. Malfunction of the reserve, the parachute, which could just be failures. Sometimes some of our choices is just a failure. And we have to accept that variable. When we're reflecting, thinking about where we want to land, that may be the landing. This just didn't work. That relationship wasn't going to work. That relationship couldn't work. But I learned from that if I allow myself to reflect. A successful landing, like in skydiving, is when your landing is aligned with presence and intention. We're able to land softly. You're able to land without hurting yourself. You're able to land exactly on your mark, exactly where you intended before you exited that plane. Rumination, in contrast, is like spinning in circles mid-air with no chute pulled. Now, I have to tie in this conversation with my memoir and my keynote. I was just talking to my cousin from the D about my memoir that I'm so excited for folks to get a chance just to see me better and also in that mirror see themselves. And it ties in well with the idea of reflection. For my memoir shows how reflection shaped my present, especially after my divorce and deep relationships. My reflections on those experiences allowed me to be able to find my truth. A truth that I ignored for many, many years. A truth that I'm going to discuss a little bit further. I can honestly say that my life began clicking again because presence was reestablished. I didn't realize how distracted I was, how confused I was, the whirlwind that I was in. When I think of my personal reflection, and I'm going to be vulnerable with y'all, particularly when I think of my patterns of rumination in the past, I started observing a pattern. How every relationship, the way it ended, lead it back to the same truth. And that truth, as I did my inner work, had nothing to do with the female, with my lover. For I desire non-exclusivity. That's my truth. When I was able to reflect, it revealed that this is my authentic preference, and it is not a prison. Understand and acknowledge that I am a lover of beauty. I'm a lover of experiences. I'm a lover of memories. And I'm a lover of women. I'm able to balance desire with honor, integrity, privacy, and safety. And I'm able to do so when I acknowledge my truth. And I don't hide this from those that I come in contact with. Now, I do have to add this caveat. This presence, thus preference of mine, doesn't mean rejection of monogamy. It means accepting who I am in this moment. I see the value of monogamy. I've appreciated and I've enjoyed many relationships of monogamy. I used to think rumination was just me being deep. One of my lover's daughters used to always say to me, "It's not that deep, Law." And I've come to understand and accept that in my pattern of rumination, that was just me arguing with myself about what I should have texted back in 2007. What I shoulda, woulda, coulda. You ever notice how rumination turns you into your own bad relationship? Constant replay, no growth, and no dinner date. No ending that could be happy. Yeah, it's a cycle until it's not. As we approach our end to this topic, I want to encourage the audience to practice reflection and not rumination. And this is a caution. Don't do shadow work and reflection entirely alone. Sometimes we need another voice to help us see, as we discussed those options in last week's episode. Therapy, a mentor, etc. And this is also where relationships are truly important, for you're able to see your actual mirror in real time. So I have a call to action if you're interested, if you're up for the challenge. Take 5 minutes today. Write down one reflection that yields clarity, not confusion. And be honest. I have another challenge. It's a listener handout idea. On a piece of paper, write down in 2 columns, reflection versus rumination. And then in each column, you're going to write down these 2 prompts. About reflection and about rumination, what did I learn? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn of the topic? And then the other prompt is going to be, when you think of what you learned, why did this happen to me? Sit in that space. And make space for yourself to capture your aligned actions, what you're going to do next, what you can do next. Going back to the epigraph, reflection is the art of seeing with clarity. Rumination is the trap of staring at the same shadow until it swallows you. As I used the illustration last week, when one is putting oneself together to go to a gala or go to an event, it is hard to be ready. It is hard to be sharp, to be clean, if your mirror is dirty, if your reflection is not clear. So I trust that this conversation provided you with a clear landing space. I trust that this conversation allows you to be able to see within yourself the rumination loops that you may have found yourself in. I trust this conversation will allow you to see your art, that is your life, much clearer. This is Larian Hassan, Episode 5, Reflection versus Rumination of Discipline and Desire. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. If you like what you heard, please share it with others. Give me that thumbs up. And till the next time. I have some more bonus material that I will be dropping, some new bonus chapters, as well as some poetry that I've written that I want to be able to just share with you all. Till the next time. Peace.